He stands alone on an outcrop, looking down through the wispy curls of fog at the rocks jutting like crooked teeth, and for a moment, the world stands still. Hello, my name's Olly and welcome to Pieces of Art, where we discuss beautiful and interesting art from around the world. Today, I'd like to take a moment to explore Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog, probably the best-known painting of German Romanticist Casper Friedrich. We'll discuss the historical context and composition of the piece, and then talk about the three things that I find most interesting about it, which are the calm in the storm, the power of landscape, and the sense of journey. Friedrich completed this oil painting in 1818. It was based on his extensive sketches of the Elbe sandstone mountains on the border of Germany and the Czech Republic. The painting is in a portrait orientation with neat proportions that follow the rule of thirds of composition. 1/3 is sky, 1/3 is the figure, and the last third is the rock on which he stands. This gives the work a tremendous sense of space to the viewer. There are also strong geometrical elements in the composition. The rocky precipice he stands on forms the apex of a triangle that echoes the bow of a ship breaking through the waves. Our eye line is drawn to the figure by the symmetrical downward slopes of the mountaintops. The position of the viewer follows the Rückenfigur technique, which places the audience directly behind the main character. This gives us a blank canvas onto which we can project ourselves into the painting. We become the wanderer, looking over the mountains and considering our own emotional response to the view. This technique was often used by Friedrich and is still common today. The figure itself is of a young man with a shock of red hair. He rests one hand on his knee and the other on a walking cane. We don't know who he is. Some say it's a self-portrait of Friedrich, who shared the same red hair. As a youth, he was traumatized by witnessing his brothers drowning in a frozen lake, and it's been suggested that this painting may have been inspired by this event. Others say it may have been a colonel in the Saxon army fighting in Germany's wars of liberation. Certainly his dress in a forest green tunic would support this interpretation. The first thing I find interesting about this painting is the sense of calm in the storm. The scene is still, with a hint of wind-blown fog and a few wisps of the man's hair caught in a breeze. But despite this stillness, there's a tremendous sense of depth to the landscape. Friedrich's depiction of the natural world is awe-inspiring. This is typical of Romanticism, which aimed to reclaim the intrigue and beauty of nature from the cold science of the Enlightenment. There's a great sense of emotion in the stillness. Nothing's in motion, but you feel the contemplation and can't help but place yourself in the man's thoughts. What is he thinking as he stares out? What effect is this endless view having on him? I'm reminded of a quotation from German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. If you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. The second thing I find most interesting about this painting is that it's a great example of the power of a landscape. Friedrich paints an awe-inspiring scene, leaving the viewer stunned by the sheer grandeur of the view. The colour palette is muted. It doesn't need to be anything more dramatic. The cream fog and the concrete precipices are dashed with yellow, and that's it. That's all that's needed. Beautiful landscapes have always had the power to inspire emotion. Sometimes we're impressed by the timelessness of the natural world, reminded that this beautiful view was enjoyed by those long before us and will be there long after we're gone. Sometimes a landscape reminds us of home. The colours, the light, and even the smell draws us to the place where we feel most connected, even long after we've left it behind. Unfortunately, the power of this particular landscape led to the work and others by Friedrich, being hijacked as propaganda by the Nazi Party in the 1930s and 40s. The majestic, beautiful and boundless mountains were used as proxies for Germany itself, and the figure went from being reflective and lonely to conquering and assured, a man staring out over his majestic homeland, dreaming of expansion. This shows just how powerful an image Friedrich created, and how anything so emotive can be used for either good or evil. Finally, I'd like to discuss the sense of journey in this painting. Looking at the figure, I think of a long journey, and more specifically, the moments just before you leave and after you return. That fleeting thought as you leave home that you will return a different person, or perhaps that you won't return at all. Then the bittersweet realization when you return, sometimes long after the fact, that your journey has ended and that it's changed you. For better or worse, there's no going back to who you were. But for me, the man in this painting is at the end of a journey, not the start. I think he's reflecting on what has been, not what is to come. He looks at the rocks, the fog, and the wide open sky, and he takes stock. Perhaps there's a sense of accomplishment, perhaps regret. This is a man closing a chapter, the beautiful and the tragic coalescing into one whole as he stares into the distance. You get the sense that this is an authentic human moment, a private moment of contemplation, perhaps even loneliness. There's also a hint of danger in his pose. He is, after all, literally standing on the edge. One step would be his last. To me, this ambiguity is what makes this painting so special. It stirs up emotions in the viewer, but each of them will be different. Some will see sadness, some will see hope, and some will see themselves. I hope you've enjoyed exploring this piece with me today. It's an evocative and beautiful painting that still resonates over 200 years since it was painted. I look forward to discussing another piece of art soon and reading your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, goodbye.